Hello guys, welcome to Physics Grad. This is part 1 of a series on canonical transformations, and in this we are going to introduce what canonical transformation is and how it describes the system and in what manner we use them. Okay, so we have already seen that in our previous lecture that when we are describing the system using our Lagrangian formulation, then we make use of the configuration space, and if we are describing the system using the Hamiltonian formulation, we make use of the phase space. Now if you notice, note the in configuration space, so first let us consider the Lagrangian formulation. So in configuration space we have no restrictions on the choice of generalized coordinates. Okay, so what I mean by this is that if you take an example, in 2 dimension we can represent the position of a particle using either the Cartesian coordinate system or the plane polar coordinate system. So that means we can use either the Cartesian coordinates or the plane polar coordinates to describe the same thing in 2D space, correct? And how do we go from this set of coordinates to this set of coordinates? We make some form of a transformation which is given by the following equation. Here r is going to be root of x square plus y square and theta is going to be tan inverse of y by x. And similarly, if you want to go from r theta to x, we have x equal to r cos theta and y equal to r sin theta. So these equations determine how we transform our set of coordinates from x, y to r theta or the other way around. But why do we need to do this first of all? Okay, so need for this is if you consider a system which involves a central potential, then if this is the center and you want to find the potential at this point, if we use our xy, if the center is in the origin, okay, so if I use our xy system, then to deter the potential at this point, if it is for example a gravitational potential or a Coulombic potential, V is going to be proportional to minus 1 by root of x square plus y square. So you see that if you describe the Lagrangian where the potential depends in this manner, the Lagrangian is going to be dependent on x and y as well. Whereas if you use the r theta formulation or coordinates, then we can describe it using just r and not theta, which means if we use this coordinates or in this basis, the Lagrangian becomes cyclic in q equal to theta, okay, which implies that the corresponding conjugate momentum of theta, okay, so this implies dou L by dou theta dot becomes a constant, okay. This we have already seen. If the Lagrangian is cyclic with respect to some particular coordinate, then the corresponding conjugate momentum is going to be an integral of motion. And when this happens, it simplifies our problems by a lot, because we can eliminate a lot of algebra when this particular case holds. Because when we substitute this in a differential equation, it is very easy to integrate constants. whereas here when we find the conjugate momenta with respect to x and y, it is going to be a function and not a constant. So if we transform our problem being described by some set of coordinates to some other set of coordinates where we have some kind of a cyclic dependence, which means that for some of the coordinates the Lagrangian doesn't depend on them explicitly, then it simplifies our problem to a large extent by in this sense. Okay, now note that R, X, Y have dimensions of length, whereas our theta doesn't. Okay, what this suggests is that in general Q need not have dimensions of length. Here Q is a generalized coordinate. Okay, so in similar fashion we can generalize the above kinds of transformation as follows. So in general consider a transformation from a set of coordinates q1 q2 up till qs to a new set of coordinates q1 q2 qs such that all of these new coordinates qs are independent and expressed as a function of q's plus the time t. Okay, so this means that our new transformed coordinates should be we should be able to express them as a function of the old coordinates plus the time. Okay, so let us call this as our equation 2, and this we have called as equation 1, that particular example. Okay, if these are invertible, that is, if we can get back our old coordinates as a function of these, okay, then what it means is that this implies both q's and the new coordinates are describing the same thing. So what I mean by this is that it is this in the same sense as what happens here. Okay, so here you see that the new coordinates is functions of old coordinates. Here it is not a function of time, but in general you can have a function of time as well. And we see that these are independent, which means that you cannot write theta in terms of r. Plus we see that these equations are invertible in the sense that we can get our x and y in terms of r and theta. If that is the case, our r and theta is basically containing the informations about x and y, or the position of the coordinate of the object. So both r and theta and x and y are both having the same information but in different forms. Okay, so in general a transformation of this kind, if it is such that all the qi's are independent and we can invert these transformations to get our qi back, then we can say that these new qi's in a way have the same information which was contained in our old coordinates, but they show it to us in a different manner. Okay, and the need to do this is to find this new set of coordinates wherein there are more number of cyclic coordinates, which makes our problem easier to solve. Okay, all right. So this implies that we can, so since both of these represent the same system, we should be able to describe a Lagrangian which depends on the new set of coordinates. Okay, so this implies we can describe a new Lagrangian L dash which is a function of the new coordinates q, q dot and t. Okay, where we define q dot as dq by dt. And if we have this new Lagrangian, we can again define our new action s dash as equal to integral L dash dt, and correspondingly we can get our Euler-Lagrange equation as dou L dash by dou q equal to d by dt dou L dash by dou q dot. If we compare the Euler-Lagrange equation with respect to new coordinates with the old one, so for q's we had dou L by dou q equal to d by dt dou L by dou q dot. So if you compare these two, only when the transformation is such that they are invertible and all the new coordinates are independent, we can describe the system equally well, and therefore the resulting equations of motion should also be the same. But the new equations may be in the form of other new coordinates, okay, but the path which both of the equations traces is going to be the same. Okay, so in that sense, okay, so in this sense the Euler-Lagrange equations are invariant under this transformation. Okay, so such transformations are called point transformations, okay, which are a special subclass of some broader kind of transformations called the canonical transformations, which we are going to see next. Okay, so for that now before I go into that, just let us make a note that not all transformations can be point transformations. Okay, so for example, if you consider new x given by x square and new y given by y square, this is also describing new set of coordinates, but this is not invertible, because for 4 different values of x and y we get the same value of capital X and y, that is capital X and y is equal to minus mod x mod y, or minus mod x minus mod y, or minus mod x plus mod x minus mod y, and mod x mod y. Okay, so when I say this means that for both positive and negative values of our small x coordinate, we get the same capital X coordinate. So if we know this, we do not know which of these we mean. It can be any of this. Therefore, this is not an invertible transformation, and therefore this is not a type of point transformation, because the new coordinates x and y have lost some information because of this squaring operation. Okay, so therefore they do not contain the same information as our old coordinates, and therefore they cannot be considered as point transformations. Okay, all right. Therefore point transformations must be invertible, and the new coordinates must be independent. So by independent, if you define a new coordinate x as 2x plus y and y as some 6x plus 3y, then this is basically equal to 3 times x. Okay, so this new x and y do not represent the same system, because just knowing x and y we cannot get back what the value of original x and y were. So this new x and y can correspond to many possible values of previous x and y. So therefore again this transformation is not invertible. Also they are not independent, because y can be written as a in terms of x. Okay, so this again is not a point transformation. All right. Okay, so what if we are in the we are using the Hamiltonian formulation. So if we are using the Hamiltonian formulation, here we have two s independent variables which we call as q and p, and where we call our q as generalized coordinates and generalized momenta, plus of course our time. Now when I say generalized coordinate and generalized momenta, you should not imagine them as representing or having a dimension of length and linear momentum. No. This definition that they're generalized coordinates and momenta is just to emphasize the fact that they are conjugate variables, in the sense that they satisfy an equations of the form q dot equal to dou h by dou p and p dot equal to dou h by minus dou h by dou q. So minus dou h by dou q. Okay, so in order to say this, in this sense we say that they are generalized coordinate and momentum. Other than that, there is no physical relation to the actual momentum and the position, just like how in the previous case theta did not have the dimension of length, it was just an angle. Okay, so here too we can perform a transformation to another set of variables, such that which I am going to call it as q and p, such that these q's and p's describe the system equivalently well. Okay, so just like in our previous case how r and theta describe the position in the same sense as x and y, the new we can here also perform a transformation to new sets of generalized coordinates and momenta, such that these new coordinates also describe the system equally well. Okay, now again here note that q and p need not have dimensions of length or linear momentum. So the only context in which they are called generalized coordinates and momentum is, so the only condition is that they are such that they satisfy q dot equal to dou h by dou p and p dot equal to minus dou h by dou q. Okay, so this implies for the new transformed variables to describe the system in an equivalent manner, they too must satisfy satisfy q dot equal to dou h dash by dou p and p dot equal to dou h dash by dou q. Okay, so just like how in our previous case the Euler-Lagrange equations were invariant under the point transformations, similarly in this kind of a transformation, if we want our new transformed variables to represent the system in an equivalent manner, they too must follow an equation which must be similar in form to the Hamilton's equation, where here we have the new Hamiltonian h dash, which is a function of the new transformed generalized momenta and coordinates. Okay, and here too our new coordinates can be expressed as a function of the old coordinates q, p and t. Similarly, p can be expressed as a function of q, p and t. And once again, for these to, in order to represent the system in an equivalent fashion, they too must be independent plus invertible. Okay, so here again I want to emphasize that q and p need not physically represent position and momentum. We simply say them as position and momentum in order to describe our Hamilton's equations in this manner, to distinguish between these sets of equation and these sets of equation. Only for that we call them as the generalized momentum and position, but other than that, mathematically speaking, they are just independent variables, q and p's. Okay, you should not make any physical connection to the actual position and the linear momentum here, because these are if you consider the actual momentum and position, they are, you can take that meaning only when you're using the Cartesian coordinates, whereas these generalized coordinates are such that they are transformed from the Cartesian coordinates based on some constraints, because that's where generalized coordinates are used. So these constraints are taken care by this generalized coordinates in such a way that the coordinates are described using some quantity which need not physically represent the position and momentum. Therefore, yeah, we already wrote that. So we call the new q and p as transformed generalized coordinates and momentum. Okay, in order to define the new h dash and Hamilton's equations. Okay, so such transformations that do not change the form of Hamilton's equations are called canonical transformations. Okay, such transformations that do not change the form of Hamilton equations are called canonical transformations. Okay, now again note that not all transformations are canonical. So how can we check whether a given transformation is canonical or not, and what are some different examples of these canonical transformations? This will be the topic for our next video. So I hope whatever has been discussed so far in this video is clear to you. So Thank you for watching. See you next time.